Yeah, I think it's a good question. So the question being, why do salespeople fail? And I think it's a loaded question because there's a lot of different reasons. We really need to dissect like what the product is and what the process is and kind of how they've been trained. But I will say that I think in general, from my experience, most of you know that I spent 15 years doing sales and coaching and training, and before we started Speak Loud. And what I saw over that time is most salespeople, like in general, sales is a lost art, honestly. A lot of people say that they're in sales because it's the job title they have, but not a lot of people are uber successful inside of sales. There are a ton, right? But just in a general sense, a lot of people get sales jobs and their title is sales, but reality is they haven't been trained in sales. They've been trained in kind of customer service or order taking. They have not necessarily been trained in sales, and even more so, they haven't been trained in closing. I would see a lot of good salespeople in general, meaning that they could sell a product and they could pitch a product. It's probably the better word, but they weren't very good at closing deals. And that was the gap that they were missing. That's what we had to work on with a lot of different people. And I think that this is the problem is like when it gets tough, like when a consumer starts asking questions beyond their like brochure brain, they're out. They don't know what to say. It starts getting tough. They start asking too many questions. They don't have the rebuttal or the answer to their question. And so they land on is, hey, I'm not a pushy salesperson. I want to give you an opportunity to think about this. And like something I've learned is like, for the most part, thought is instantaneous. They know sitting there with you or talking to you on the phone or inside of your store, whether they want to purchase or not. But the bottom line is here's like there has to be some conviction, there has to be some understanding that if your product or service solves their problem that they're having or their desire, then they would buy your product if they were convinced enough that your product or service solves their problem. But if they don't know without a shadow of a doubt or with a certain degree of certainty that your product solves their problem, they're not, because there's apprehension. There's apprehension there of like, I don't know if like this is the thing I need. I don't know if this genuinely solves my problem, because if I'm going to leave here and purchase this thing or this service or whatever it is and it's not going to solve my problem, I've wasted money. And to me, a lot of transactions are not even necessarily about affordability or price. Some of them are, but I think in a general sense, it's like if they knew that it solved their problem, their desire, their want, then they would purchase because they're inquiring about it. They're asking about it. They're trying to solve some type of problem. Y'all have heard me in previous videos that problems come in various shapes and sizes. Problems could be they have pests and they need them gone. Problem could be as simple as they are hungry and they need to eat. So across the spectrum of businesses and business types, you are solving a problem. So that being said is like, most salespeople, that's when they check out, is if they have done their initial kind of rehearsed rebuttals and objection handling, and they still have not closed that deal, that's when they check out. And then someone better at their job comes along, or the next place they call or visit does a better job of answering those questions or overcoming those objections, and they get the deal or the sale or whatever you want to call it in your particular business. But so I think there's a level that we have to, if we're training professional salespeople and even more so like professional closers, is they have to be able to go past the objections and genuinely answer the questions and genuinely believe that their product or service solves the problem. Because I think there are professional con men or sleazy salespeople that are out there. They know their product doesn't work, or they don't believe in their product, but they're gotten so good at convincing other people, and that's like honestly like the Jordan Belforts of the world and things like that. And now hearing him now, he sounds like a very different person. But back then, like he didn't care if a stock performed or not. He just wanted to make a sale, and he was very convincing to get people to buy, because he was a professional con person, and he would be the first to admit that. But I think us trying to train our people and teach our people is like, we want them to believe in the product and the service. And like, so it all has to back itself up. But if they have that conviction, then they should be able to show that conviction to the person they are talking to. They should be able to walk them through of like, here's your problem. Here's a solution. It solves your issue. It solves your problem. And I believe in it so much, and I want you to believe in it so much. And that's where the process kind of should go. Number one is like objections in general, especially the first layer of objections, even the second layer of objections. They're what I would call, and a lot of people would call, smoke screens anyways. They're not the true reason why someone is not convinced or not ready to move forward with a purchase. They're what they told the last person that got them to go away. So if it worked for that last person, it should work on this guy. And if this is a lower tier sales rep or even a mid tier sales rep, it's going to get them to go away. And it's going to get me my time to sit back and really think on it. And I think there's absolutely real certain sales cycles that require a thought process. And I know I said thought is instantaneous, but I think there are certain sales cycles and certain products and certain services that it does require thought. There are people who are going to want to look at a couple of different options. They're going to want to make sure the thing they're buying solves their problem. They're going to make sure it fits the need that they have. And so I think that there are, for me, for an example, my wife is my business partner. And so I'm not going to make a decision on a single phone call with someone I've never met to just move our entire CRM system over to someone else. Now, if I've done all of the research and I've dug into their company and I've had the conversations with her, and then I hop on a demo call and I'm like, great, here are my questions, and they answer those things again, they get me to a place of like, this works, this does what we need it to do. And sure, but I've done my homework up front. If I have not, if it's a cold call and they're going, hey, our CRM does these things and we know these are issues for agency owners and we've fixed those problems, then I'm going to want to see a demo. I'm going to want to talk to my team and go, hey, these are some issues that we're having. This particular platform solves those problems. Here's the price point. What do we think? And then, yeah, sure, they get me on an actual sales call and a demo, and I see that it does actually do all those things. And yeah, I may be willing to move forward on technically a single phone call. But I think there are real transactions that require, some thought and take some time. But what I'm getting at is, our salespeople, if they are defaulting to that, it's because they're leaving apprehension there. They're leaving uncertainty there. They're leaving questions on the table. And typically the first thing we're like, I got to talk to my wife, or I got to talk to my spouse, or, oh, I'm just shopping. The reality is like they have a problem they're trying to solve. And you didn't do a good enough job. Your salespeople didn't do a good enough job of convincing and showing them that I solved that problem, because you're clearly looking for a solution, but you aren't ready to move forward. And so you have to get to the root. You have to move past, and that's usually, again, where most salespeople check out. They get that first objection and they've got something loaded. And they say, I need to talk to my spouse. And I do that. Well, hey, let's call your spouse up. Let's get them on the phone. Let's do that. What if we three-way called them in? Or let's set up a call here in 10 minutes where we can get them on the call as well. I think that that's their loaded one. But as soon as the person comes back with that next objection, then they're kind of frozen in the headlights. And some of you, it may take that third or fourth objection before you're like, man, we're at a stall. I don't know what else to do. But in general, it's going to be that first or second one. And it's honestly a smokescreen. Like they've already decided in their mind, if you have not painted a good enough picture, if you have not laid it out of how your product or service solves their problem, they're out. Like they're moving on. They're going to go to the next person that explains it better. Maybe their product isn't even as good as yours, but they did a better job of explaining the problems it does solve. And it checks maybe 3 out of 5 boxes they were looking for. And they go, well, this makes more sense. So here's a simple one, easy one. And there's all types of different closes and closing techniques that you can layer in there. We're going to share more and more of those, and we put some more of these out. But one easy, simple way is I want you to think of a scale. And I want you to put that scale in front of your consumer. And this works in a lot of different sales arenas. It may not work in certain businesses just because of just the way the structure would be. It might be awkward. But for you to have gone through a sales cycle with a prospect or customer or potential customer, and you have walked through the steps, and they have given you initial objection, you kind of overcome that, I want you to put a scale in front of them and go, look, let's just kind of see where we're at. I like to take a temperature check from time to time because I want to ensure that I'm doing my job explaining this and walking you through this and telling you how it works. I honestly feel like this fits your needs. I feel like this solves the problems you're looking to solve, but I feel like maybe you and I are on 2 different pages. So I just kind of want to do a temperature check and kind of see where we're at. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you can't stand me, can't stand my product, you can't stand the service, it's not going to solve your problem. That's 1. And 10 being can you just send me an invoice? I want to get this thing done because this is absolutely what we need. Where exactly are you on that scale? Wait, pause, let them answer. Let's say they go, I'm a 6, I'm probably about a 6. No, thinking about it, I'm probably 7. And you go, okay, fair, right? So why are you, on the positive side, why are you at a 7? What have I walked you through and told you and explained to you that you go, yes, that is what we need. Yes, that solves my problem. Yes, that is what it is. Again, let the room breathe. Let the phone call breathe. Let them talk. Let them tell you all the things they like about what you've said. You go, great. Okay, so everything that you've mentioned and everything that kind of you've said is clearly you also think that this is a fit and you think that this could work for you guys, but it's not the product or service I'm offering you. If you're already at a 7, it's not the product or service that is holding you up. What does it take for us to go from a 7 to a 10? What ultimately is keeping you at a 7 and not at a 10? And again, let it breathe. Either let them realize that they're really not at a 7, that they are at a 9 or a 10, and they're just in their own head, because some people will do that. They'll naturally go, I'm honestly not sure. I don't know. Well, hey, I get it. Like, you're trying to rack your brain and come up with an answer to my question. I totally understand it. But it sounds like maybe you're actually higher than a 7. Because if you can't tell me in this kind of moment of what's holding you back, then is there something really there, or is it just fear? Are you fearful that, hey, this thing, checks all these boxes, but I'm still concerned that it's not going to check all the boxes? What are those additional boxes? You don't have any right now. And I understand that you may think of some more down the road. Maybe it's price. Are you concerned that you're going to get locked into something that, you can't get back out of if you find out it doesn't check all the boxes, or your team's going to be upset, or accounting's going to be mad at you, or your spouse, or whatever it is? Maybe it's price. Is it that it's a subscription? I want to help you. My job as your account rep is to help you find kind of that gap. Is because, look, I'm convinced that this solves your problem. I think you're pretty much convinced that this solves your problem. And based on your scale, I think we both agree that this product service kind of solves your problem. So what's it going to take to get us to a 10? And you let them tell you. One thing I've learned about sales overall is that people are going to tell you what the issue is. People are going to tell you what the problem is. You've got to dig a little deeper. They're not going to tell you initially. They're going to throw out some smoke screen. They're going to throw out a reason or an excuse as to why they can't do this or can't do that. Some of them are genuine. Most of them are not. And so we, as professional salespeople and professional closers, have to take a moment and go deeper. Like, what questions did I leave out? And I've heard like variations of this where, like, oh, you want to go in the wheel and the cycle and like go back to like, well, here are our features, advantages, and benefits and all that. And some of that valid. Most of it is just, it's not great. And it's dated. And I honestly don't feel like, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, I know what you're doing. And it's still all the things that you've covered up to this point. If they were good enough the first time, I'd be ready to move forward. So there was something you missed in the first go round that you haven't gotten to with me yet, that I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for you to tell me the thing that I need to hear to push me over that threshold. Because there is, and it's kind of been proven, and this is sales related, but also just in general, like human interaction and behavior, is people have like this action, like move forward. They have like this threshold, is that if I move them from here to here, then they will be ready to move forward. Like there's a certain, like there's a lever, there's a mechanism, there's a moment, there's a information kind of gateway that if I can get them to this side, then they'd be willing to move forward. They'd want my service, they'd want my product. And again, I know I'm going super deep with this, but like this applies from, again, pest control to pizza. I understand when most people walk in a pizzeria, they're not going like, really convince me that your pizza is the best. But you had to do that with like food. You had to do that before. You had to do that with like your marketing and with your advertising, your promotions that you're putting out there. You had to do all that before. But the same principles still apply. Is like, how do I get them to choose my pizza place? There's a threshold. It's like I had to get them from any pizza place to my pizza place. And how do I do that? I move them along this journey through marketing and advertising to where they go, I want to go here. Now, the way we're talking about in the traditional sense is we're talking about being on a call, we're talking about sitting down with a prospect. So obviously that doesn't apply to a pizzeria, but understand those principles still apply. But you have to be able to move people. Like, it's the same, we talk about like funnels in marketing and advertising, is you move people from completely unaware to some knowledge or some awareness or some brand recognition to an understanding of, they know who you are and they know what you do and they know somewhat of kind of what issues you solve or what problems that you solve, to like, we want to get them all the way down that funnel to like warm prospect. They have questions that they need answered. They think maybe you can solve their problem, but they're not 100% convinced because there's no way for them to know all the different nuances and mechanisms of your business and what you do for the consumer. That's the point that we're trying to get them to, is like, that's the same scale, is like 1 to 10. Is most people are in a buying window. Like, if you get them to a 7 or 8, probably an 8, is that they're probably pretty convinced, and you probably get them moved forward if you actually asked for the business. And that's a whole nother topic that we could dive into on another day. But if you're not actually asking for the business, and going, okay, well, let's get this thing moving forward, and then you're like, did they stop you? Did they object? Did they have more questions? They go, well, wait. Okay, well, then we missed something, and we've got to, again, kind of circle back a little bit and make sure, and like, just, I'm making sure where we're at here. You said you were kind of on my scale, you were on a 7 or maybe an 8. Most people that are at an 8 are pretty convinced and have a pretty good understanding of what our product or service does and the problems that we solve. And, so what's holding you back at this point? Oh, you're not the decision maker. You can't even make the call on this thing. Well, it goes back to your sales training. Did you qualify them? Did you find out if any other people needed to be on the call or in that meeting? Are they lying? There's a few different variations there of like what could be going on. But I think that just in general, salespeople have to be trained to not only be kind of educators, they have to be trained to be trainers. They have to really understand the product or services. They have to really understand the prospect and the client and what needs do they have, what problems do they have, what past pain did they have, what cycles have they been through before, what other companies like yours maybe have they worked with in the past. I want to understand all of those things in the beginning because it gives me my ammunition for this phase. It's like, hey, I know you told me some of kind of the last problems that you had. You worked with an agency like ours in the past, and you just felt like a number to them. Like, we are anti-numbers inside of our agency. 98% of our clients have become personal connections for us. Is that they are more than just a number to us. They are the livelihood of our business. They are the backbone of our business, and we become true partners inside of these businesses that we work with. We are most of their entire marketing advertising team or leg of their business. And so there's no way they could possibly just become a number to us. We care too much. Is that a good enough answer? For some. For maybe some, I'll have to go a little deeper than that. They tell me, it's the setup fee. It's a setup fee that's really got me hung up. If there was a way around that, then I would probably, hey, I totally understand. We get that question from time to time. What exactly is the setup fee for? And I probably didn't do a very good job of covering that initially, but let me kind of walk you through that. Setup fees for us is there are so many things that have to happen in the first 30 days of you coming on as a new client for ours. We need access to all your creatives. We need to create new content. We have to create new libraries for all of that content. We have to essentially like rebuild a little bit of your systems. We have to build out any automations that need to be built. We have to get you added to all of our systems. We're talking about 6 or so different team members on our end. Once we get past that initial 30 days, then it's not all 6 of those team members, because we don't need as much from graphic design. We don't need as much from onboarding. We only need your kind of ad specialist at that point that's going to be working on the campaign. So that's really where the setup fee comes in. There's a lot of heavy lifting for us that comes in that first 30 days. So that's why we have a setup fee. Pause. Does that make sense? And that's what I'm going to ask the prospect. And if they tell me that, yeah, that makes total sense. We actually have a setup fee too. Oh, so you're just trying to skim me on my setup fee when you also have a setup fee. Would you give it away for free? No, probably not. Now, being transparent with you, in certain scenarios, depending on the campaign and depending on the work that has to be done, are we willing to waive a setup fee or break it out over a couple of months or something? Like, yeah, probably. We do not do that all the time. I mean, we do stick to our guns 98% of the time because there's genuinely a lot that has to happen over that time period, and a lot of team members that are involved, and a lot of money being spent in that first 30 days. So not are we always going to come off of that, but if it is the difference, and this is sales for me, and because I'm the owner, I can make this decision. If it is the difference between me getting this client or not getting this client, I'm going to take getting this client. So if it means me waiving, I'm going to give you, a fictitious example here, but if it takes me waiving a $499 on-board fee to retain a $1,500 a month retainer, I'm going to choose the $1,500 retainer. Now, I am probably going to do my job first and walk them through, this is why we have a setup fee and this is what it is for. And then we're going to see kind of where that goes. But I'm going to be willing to work with them, especially now I'm going to ask for something back. Inside of our agency, we do not have any long-term agreements or contracts. That was something we adopted from day one and we haven't moved off of. There are only some that we have longer term contracts. That's more on our consulting and coaching side. For various reasons, most of our clients want that. They want to know that we're only working with them. And so we offer that. But I may throw something back in the mix, like, hey, look, if we're willing to waive that setup fee or cut it in half or whatever maybe the scenario is, here's what we can do, is I won't charge you the setup fee initially, but I'm going to layer it in to your first 6 months of retainer with us. So instead of you paying us $1,500 that we've agreed on, you're going to be paying us like $1,650, and that way we're able to get it back kind of over time. But that also means that you are locking in for 6 months, because we have to ensure that we get that on board back, because I am eating that cost for you initially. And see what they say. Like, is that fair? And that's a question I love in sales and in closing. Like, is that fair? Because if I put it in front of them, I genuinely believe it's fair. And if it is reasonable, then they're going to think it's fair as well. So I hope that this was kind of helpful. This is still surface level. I mean, we went a little deeper on like certain things in terms of like sales cycle. But I think this stuff is important. While we are and have been known as like your marketing advertising agency, we do this type of stuff for some of our clients, whether it is a coaching or consulting client or some of our kind of retainer marketing advertising clients. When I say that we become like this partner in their business, this is what I mean. Is my background is building teams and building businesses in general. It's not just marketing and advertising. And I say just, marketing and advertising is such a huge piece of the business, which is why Speak Loud exists, is because we know that without marketing and advertising, and you're just expecting people to call your phone or walk in your store, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you're only relying on referrals and word of mouth, that works for some time, but it does not work all the time, and it is certainly not predictable. Could be 50 leads one month and then 0 for 3, and that's not how you scale and forecast a business. But this piece of training people, it goes so deep. Like, training and investing in your people, in your sales staff, in your customer service people, it bleeds into how well they do their job, closing percentages, sales numbers, but it also goes into like hiring, recruiting, and retention. Is like, if they feel that they're being invested in and that they are being lifted up and they're being trained and they're being able, that they know how to better do their job, so they're able to be more effective at their job. And if they're in a sales role, there's probably some types of incentives on the table, whether they're straight commission or they're salary plus commission or base plus commission. If they feel like that you are investing in them as the business owner, as the leadership, then they're more likely to stay around. Because if they're making good money and continually making more money, that means you're making more money, but they also feel like you believe in them. So this is hugely important. And this is something, this video, feel free to share with your team members so they can go through and watch that. We're at about 25 minutes. We're probably going to upload this. While this was an answer to a question from a group call that we were doing, we're likely going to post this probably as a podcast as well, because I think that this stuff is just important. I wish that early in my career, as I was teaching and training people and doing it myself, that I had some of this, that I could go, yeah, that is it. That's what I've been trying to express or get across. And to wrap all of this up, as a salesperson, go a little deeper. Dive a little deeper into why are they objecting or why are they not moving forward. Walk them through a scale. Find out what it is, because I guarantee you there's a level of uncertainty that they still have. They are not 100% or even 90% convinced that what you're telling them is either A, the truth, or B, that it solves their problem and it checks the boxes they need it to check. And so if that's the case, if they think you're not telling the truth, show them. Show them exactly what it does. Walk them through the process. Is like, I can actually show this to you. And I don't care if that's marketing or advertising, and it's showing them case studies, and it's showing them client testimonials, and it's showing them B-roll that you've shot if you're a videographer. It's showing them successful ad campaigns that you've run, or it's pest control. And you showing them, these are the examples. These are the hundreds of clients that we have served, that we have solved this exact problem for. Now you've convinced them a little more. They have like social proof that you are who you say you are. And all of this should already be done early in the process. But if you missed it or didn't cover it well enough, then you're able to go back to it and reiterate. If it's just they're not convinced it's going to solve their problem, you need to figure out what element of their problem they feel like it's not being solved. Because again, you could have missed it, you could have kind of glazed over it, and you need to go back and reiterate and go, well, if you didn't know that our system could generate SMS messages, if you're looking for a CRM and you didn't know, like, we're really hoping that we could find a CRM that, is able to not only send emails, but, could also do SMS, because we want our team to be able to text through the platform. Oh, we do that. You do? Like mind blown. They just moved from a 6 to an 8 and like they're ready to move forward. It just takes, but if you would have already given up, if they had already said, I just don't know, I've really got to think about it. We're not really looking to make a decision right now. And you'd have went, hey, no pressure, no big deal. Let me circle back with you in 3 months. Reality is also, again, another video for another day. Salespeople are notorious at bad follow-up. Notorious. Especially if they don't have the right systems in place. If they don't have a good CRM with a calendar system and all that. But even if they do, I've seen this time and time and time again, they don't update their CRM. They're not getting off that call and then going right over there and going calendar event for 3 months, call Bob, and making notes of like, this is where we left off. They're going to wait for Bob to call them back. And guess what? Bob ain't calling you back. Bob's going to get another phone call from another CRM agency that's going to do a better job and go, oh yeah, we've heard of those guys. Here's what ours does better. And whether it does or whether it doesn't. Like the last thing that I want, and I always took it very personal, and I'm going to leave you with this. I always took sales calls and sales appointments very personally. And I know they say to like take the personal out of it. No, like I took ownership of it. And here's why, and I still do to this day, is because I believe in my product or service. I believe that we are the best fit for them. And it's not something I've convinced myself of. It's something I truly believe. And so if I truly believe that, I take like this personal ownership or stake, and I don't want them going with someone else. Because everything they said that are their concerns or their fears, I don't want to see that come true. I don't want to see that be their reality. I don't want to see them go down this track of like some slick Rick, or, we used to use in the construction space, like chucking a truck or staying in a van. It was like this guy that didn't have insurance, that did fences Monday through Friday, but then some days did drywall, and then also was a painter on the side. I know that we know what we're doing. I know that we're professional. I know that we can solve your problem. I don't want to see you get taken advantage of from someone else. I don't want to see you pay someone else, even if it's cheaper or more. I don't want you to go with anybody else. I have this personal conviction that what I am offering you solves your problem, and I'm the best fit for you. That was what I walked into these meetings with, and I think salespeople in general have to convince themselves of that as well. But for me, and this may not be true for everybody, but for me, it had to be true. It had to be true. If I didn't have the personal conviction, and I walked through this before when I was doing like sales training and coaching and everything, I would walk into some places that they wanted me to talk to their staff or train some of their staff, and like that was the problem. Talking through their staff, we would go through like these individuals where I would sit down with their sales staff, their closers, their appointment setters, different things, and I would say, tell me about what you sell. Tell me about what this company does. No, well, we do carpet cleaning. Yeah, we clean carpets. Okay, my vacuum cleaner cleans carpets. So couldn't I just do this on my own? And if that was the end, yeah, you could. I knew we had a problem. But if I would get to the right place and get to the right rep, and they would go, no, actually, like, did you know that your vacuum cleaner, like the contaminants that these like residential or consumer vacuum cleaners, they leave like 60% of like the contaminants, like the dust and the allergens, like they leave those on your floor. Did you know that? I go, no. I didn't know. Like, look, let me ask you a question. Do you have a pet? Like, yeah, I've got a dog. Okay, does dog have hair? Yeah, dog has hair. Of course dog has hair. Don't be stupid. They would go, okay, well, just did you know pet hair kind of embeds itself in the carpet fibers, and most of like your consumer vacuums, even your real expensive ones, they're not getting all of that dog hair out. And did you know that there's like pet dander and allergens and things like that, that even though you're not maybe allergic to dog hair, it's sitting there can cause issues. They can cause issues for your AC filter. Like they start, again, this is where I'm going, is they go through, like this person believes in what they're trying to sell. Now, some of it could be just a really well-trained salesperson. They don't even use the service. They have a vacuum at home. They have the same vacuum I have, and they're just really good and versed. But if the product really does and all the things it's supposed to do, and it really solves the problems it's supposed to solve, and if all the things he's telling me, again, I train from a place of like transparency and reality and truth. If you're making up statistics, did you know that, let's just say 75% of, those things are left in your carpet? Is that really true? Or did they make that up? I train from a place of like, I want to know the reality, and I want you to present the reality. But when I would go into those situations, if I found a place, a company where their product or service did not actually do the things they say it does, if they did not actually have the best customer service in the world, if they didn't actually produce the best drywall or pest control experience on the planet, then there was a problem. Then you can't say those things because your salespeople don't believe it, and so the consumer is not going to believe it. Because if they're like, yeah, we're the best drywall company in Nashville, Tennessee. Like, oh, okay, well, why? I don't know, that's what they told me to say. It's what's on our business cards. You have a problem. You have a problem. That's a sales training problem. That's a pitch problem. That's a customer service problem. It's a big problem. It's a company problem. It's a culture problem. And all those things can be fixed. They can all be made right. But it really starts with like, those are your people out presenting what your product or service does. And if they don't believe in it, and they don't know what problem it solves, like most of them haven't even trained in that. They're chat GPTing it at this point, or they have some sales trainer. Here's another side note, and then I promise I will end this thing. Is so many companies take one of their top producing sales reps, and they go, that guy's our sales manager. He's just really good at what he does. I've seen it a lot. And that's not true. That's not true. Just because someone is your top producer does not mean he is the guy or the girl to train the rest of your staff of how to be good salespeople. It just means he's really good at sales, or he has a lot of connections or a lot of networking. He knows how to work smarter, not harder. Like there's so many different variables there that you cannot make that decision. Some of them, it's the right move. A lot of them, it is the wrong move, because what typically happens, and I watch this time and time again, is you take that guy out of full-time, everyday sales, and you move him into some kind of sales manager role where you go, hey, you're still responsible for your sales, but you're also responsible for these people now underneath you. What naturally happens? Their sales go down, and there might be a small increment increase over on the sales team because he's able to, like, he or she's able to trickle down some of that knowledge, maybe not very effectively. But training and teaching and mentoring is a skill. It is a skill. Some people have just natural ability to be able to relay information, but a lot of that is taught, is they have learned how to put that information in front of other people in a way that is digestible and retainable and executable. And so don't make that mistake. He or she might be the right person, but there's a good chance they're not. And what I've seen in a lot of those scenarios where they're not the right person is you wind up eventually losing that person, the person that was your number one sales rep and you've promoted to now sales manager. You lose that person because their sales went down. They're not making enough as an override as a manager. And they go, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want to just sell. Like, I'm really good at selling. I was making more money then than I'm making now, and I've got all these extra responsibilities. I don't want to do this anymore. And you may be fortunate enough that they come to you and go, I just want to go back to sales. But some owners are going to go, it's not what I need you for. I need you to be the sales manager because you're really good at it. And they go, well, man, screw you. Like, I'm suffering. I'm losing money because of it, and so I'm not doing it anymore. Or in a lot of scenarios that I watched happen is they're just gone. They start exploring other opportunities. They start talking to other companies, and they're like, yeah, you did how much in revenue the previous year? Yeah, man, we'll bring you over. We'll even beat how much they were paying you. No, you don't have to manage anybody. Like, if you eventually want a team underneath you, sure, like, we'll let you work something out. But, like, no, just come over here and sell. And they feel like this huge weight off their shoulders. They feel excited, and they're just gone. Maybe you get a 2-week notice, maybe you don't. Like, they're just gone. So don't make that mistake. But all of that even goes back to, it's training, it's coaching, it's mentoring, it's lifting people up, it's educating them, it's helping level up your team by ensuring they know how these things work and making them the most effective professional in their position that they can be. It is not just hey, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here are 3 bullet points that are on our brochure. Get out there, Tiger. It is ensuring, and it is ongoing, making sure that they understand what it is that you do, what problem that you solve, what the typical objections are from customers, and how to educate them as to either why those are a slighted view or true with others but not true with your company, and building a culture that your people believe in what you do and believe in the service that or product that you provide. That is like this winning combination for a successful company. So again, I know this was 37 minutes, almost 38 minutes of sales related things, which is not our normal topic that you've been used to, but we want to do this more. Like these types of conversations happen on our consulting and coaching side. They don't always happen on like the marketing and advertising side, but I know that it's a missing piece for a lot of businesses out there, and they're struggling with it. And I know there's also salespeople who are struggling with it, and are eventually they're going to give up or move on, and it's just a problem across the board. And so we're going to share more of our insight from our coaching and consulting side more often, because I feel like it's good, just general information for most business owners have, whether they have a sales team or they're trying to build one or they will eventually have one. It's just great information to have that you can take nuggets and pieces from. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you on the next one.